Welcome back to Thompson's Coins, where today we are taking a look at an absolutely fascinating £1 plate trial. For anyone that's unfamiliar with me or my interests, you may be fascinated to learn that, despite owning and operating a coin shop where we deal with a lot of modern coins, proof coins, silver, gold, all that sort of thing, one of my main interests and something that absolutely captures my imagination is anything relating to pre-Federation banknotes in Australia. So these are notes that predate, obviously, Federation in 1901, and the landscape of the banking world in Australia was vastly different. We had a number of private banks all issuing their own banknotes, and as a result, I believe that period produced some of the most beautiful pieces of art to ever go on banknotes. There was so much more variety, and I appreciate that with that came a catastrophic outcome. There was a huge collapse of a number of those banks, but I'm talking about this purely from an artistic and a collector's standpoint. And that period for me was absolutely fascinating, and the fact that we can still access a lot of these items today at relatively affordable prices when you consider how historically significant some of these items are. Now today we are taking a look at a £1 plate trial. This is significant for a number of reasons. It's the type of thing that was never issued for circulation. The function of something like this was to identify any issues in the print run and assess the design, any of the security features, and ensure that the note was as it should be and ready for commercial production. So things like these would have generally been retained by the printing company and not issued out to members of the public. So having things like this, I think, is incredibly cool, and I'll tell you a little more now about the history of this particular note. So this particular plate trial was produced by W and A.K. Johnston in Edinburgh. So this was a Scottish firm that was originally producing atlases and maps and had a real foundation in cartography. They then progressed on to banknote production and became one of the leading producers of banknotes of this period. This particular note would have related to the Colonial Bank of Australasia, who operated from 1856 right up until 1918. This bank ultimately merged with other banks and is still around today. You may have heard of it. They're called NAB, or the National Australia Bank. Another interesting aspect to note about this note, pun intended, is that it's dated the 30th of June 1872. Now this is also a significant year in the numismatic history of Melbourne. It's the first date of the official production of gold sovereigns by the Melbourne Mint. So 1872 was a big year, and it's nice to have a tangible piece of history that relates to that time. £1 was also the value of a gold sovereign back in the day. So conceivably, once this banknote went into production, it would have been, readily exchanged for a gold sovereign, which is pretty cool. The text on the note also reads, "The Colonial Bank of Australasia promised to pay the bearer on demand at the office here £1 sterling by order of the Board of Directors." Interestingly, the inclusion of the word sterling was also relevant during this period because the currency was physically backed by precious metals. Now, that's not something that applies in Australia anymore. So in 1932, Australia departed the gold standard, and now we operate in what's referred to as a fiat system. So all of our currency is not really backed by anything. It's all just they're all promissory notes rather than a physical claim to precious metals. So this note also relates to a period of time where all currency in circulation was being physically backed by gold and silver, which is very interesting and a bit of a rabbit hole. If you want to go down that and do some research, you may be fascinated by what you learn. Something else that I like to observe on items like these is the beauty in the artistry. If you take a closer look at even the border, all of the line work was very deliberate and it was specifically intricate as a security measure. So anyone looking to forge a note like this would have a very difficult time recreating the intricate line work that appears on them. And part of the function of a trial plate such as this was to take a close look and assess the intricacies on the artwork and the line work and ensure that everything was indeed visible and that you didn't have any areas where the design had become inundated with ink and you didn't have any issues in terms of the presentation of the note and being fully legible in all its beauty and detail. So there you go, an overview of an absolutely fascinating piece of pre-Federation history in Australia. You know, from a bank that went on to become ultimately the NAB, you can still access tangible links to that period of time all the way back in 1872 in unbelievably good condition, which makes sense because this isn't something that was ever issued for circulation. There is a big centerfold, so at some point someone either accidentally or intentionally folded it in half, maybe for transportation or something like that, which is disappointing to see, but overall it's still in very impressive condition, all things considered. So if this is a type of thing that is of interest to you, I'll have a link in the description. If it's still available, wonderful. If not, I hope you've just enjoyed this video highlighting an interesting area of collecting, which I think is often underappreciated and underrepresented. So I'm taking the responsibility to hopefully push some of these interesting things into the spotlight and just show you how interesting the history of Australian collecting can really be when it comes to old banknotes and things like that. So if this is a type of thing that's of interest to you, please consider dropping into the shop. We're here at Shop 8 in the Boronia Mall, 50 Dorset Square, Boronia. We're open Tuesday to Thursday, 10 till 4, as well as Saturdays from 10 till 3. If you enjoy collecting, the greatest hobby in the world, please consider subscribing to the channel. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, let me know what your thoughts are, and we'll see you in the next one.